Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowered by Victress podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Orsborn, today, and I am so excited to sit down and have a conversation with a much requested guest. We've had 3, 4, 5 different women reach out asking for me to have a conversation with our guest today. So I'm super, super humbled and excited that she agreed to be on today. Our guest is Sarah Christianson, former Mrs. Nebraska, excuse me. And we love elevating individual stories of women that have been through struggles. I think every woman has their own unique story, but being able to elevate and talk about your story today is an honor. So thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm still very honored and gosh, I don't know, am I worthy enough to be on this? Thank you.
Oh gosh, I don't know about that, but no, we're excited. We're excited. We're all in the business of making people better, right?
Yes, that's right.
Sarah, so you are currently, so you were a registered nurse, correct?
Yep.
Here in Lincoln?
That's right. Yep. Just over 14 years. Started staying home at the very end of 2019. So timing ended up being really good for us. And now I just run social media for local businesses and get to be home and still get to do all the things with the kids. So that's been really nice. Definitely a big change from nursing, but it's good.
Yeah. What area of nursing did you do?
So I specialize in ICU, NICU, and OR.
Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I loved it though. I loved it.
Yeah, it is a beautiful, hard profession. That is for sure.
Yeah.
I always say, like, I would love to be a nurse if I didn't have to work with doctors.
Yeah. Yep. That's, yes.
Lovingly. Saying
Right?
that lovingly.
That's right. That's right. There's always the great ones, and then there's the ones that you're like, wait, are you my kids? I'm confused. I'm confused here.
And every nurse united, like, takes their
Yeah. Exactly. They're like, I know that one.
I know that one. That's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about your story. I would imagine your background is, I would imagine, kind of led you into nursing. If I'm going to take a wild guess there, but I know you have had a very, transformative and challenging experience as you were growing up, in your later teen years, et cetera. So where did you grow up? Give us some background in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, even though technically at this point I've lived in Nebraska longer, but I still can't fully give up my southern roots. So you'll see me if it's under 60 degrees, I have the parka and everything on. But at this point we were living here in Lincoln, and it just so happened that my mom's a nurse as well. So that kind of plays a role into me becoming a nurse. And my stepdad actually worked in the cath lab at Bryan. So again, this all kind of plays in perfectly to my story. But at 17, I started noticing that I would just get super winded, almost feel like I'm going to pass out, can't catch my breath, and just my chest was going to explode. I mean, it's a crazy thing to describe, but you're like, this is new. What is happening?
Mm-hmm.
And so this had happened over and over and over. And, you think as a teenager, whatever, you're just being a hypochondriac. You're just whatever, right? We just don't stop and go, okay, wait, maybe there actually is a problem. But it finally was one day I was actually playing with my siblings. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And it got to the point where I was doubled over, and my mom saw what was going on, and my heart rate was almost 200. And she was like, all right, we're actually going to get this checked out, because that's not right. And so again, thankfully, my stepdad working at Bryan with these cardiologists and these electrophysiologists went in. I was like, this is what I'm feeling. And without even having to run any tests, they were like, yeah, you're in an arrhythmia and we're probably going to need to do surgery. And again, at 17, you're like, hold up. Wait a second. No. This is not.
Were you playing sports at the time? Were you active in sports at the time, or gymnastics? Okay.
Yep. And I joked that I was wanting to be a runner, but I was not good at that. So, I mean, at hindsight, it's probably really good that I was never good at running, because that probably would have made everything so much worse. But anyways, we ended up putting on a bunch of monitors that I wore for a short period of time. And sure enough, I was having these runs of an arrhythmia. So your heart beats due to different electrical pathways. And mine was just going crazy. It was like, nope, we're going to do our own thing. We're not going to follow how a heart is supposed to be. And so they were like, yep, we're going to take you into surgery. And that being like really my first surgery I'd ever gone through, and knowing the little bit that I knew, again, having family in the medical field, you're like, okay, well, this isn't like a broken bone. Like, this is like your major organ. And so kind of had one of those moments of like, I don't know, like, are we sure we should do this? Obviously, I'm very grateful, again, like family and amazing doctors that were like, you're going to be okay. You're going to do this. We'll fix it and you can get on with your life. Because at that point, I was already looking at, okay, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go into nursing school and this will all be great, right? Again, it's all about like the plan that we think that we have for life. Did the surgery, recovered great, didn't have any issues. And about 4 months later, I started having similar symptoms, but yet they felt a little different this time in my chest. And so you go back through essentially gaslighting yourself. Like, no, I'm just, no, it's fine. When in fact, it wasn't fine. Got another set of tests done and showed, hey, guess what? You have a whole other arrhythmia now that we didn't know you had the first time. You need surgery again. And this ended up happening several times, to the point where I ended up having 4 heart surgeries. On top of that, needing medication to continue to slow my heart. And then realizing on top of all these arrhythmias, you also have heart block, meaning my heart will not beat all the time when it's supposed to. And that obviously leads to passing out, and you just don't know if your heart's going to restart. So we're going to need to put a pacemaker in. And that, again, in those early, late teens, early 20s, you're like, no. Like, I mean, pacemakers are for like grandparents, right? I mean, that's what I thought of. And so once again, having those plans that you thought that you had just poof, gone. And now you have all these other big major, like, yeah, we have to do this. If we don't do this, like, it's going to get worse. We don't know like what else could happen to you. So I had the first pacemaker put in, and then I thought, okay, great. Like, I'm good. This is fantastic. We're going to go on with life. And that's when they start telling you, hey, by the way, you're not going to be able to live like an active lifestyle, just so you know. Like, you got to keep it like really chill, like real chill, no exercising. Don't even think of exercising. By the way, you probably shouldn't have kids because your heart's probably not going to be able to handle that. Don't do anything stressful. And then you're like, I mean, life's stressful, folks. What do you mean? Like, not too stressful. And here I am at this point, nursing school, getting ready to graduate. I'm like, I'm about to go work in the ICU. What am I supposed to do? I can't go just sit on the couch. And I've always been somebody that I can't just sit still. Like, I love to be active. I love to do things. I mean, again, being the oldest of 5 kids, you're chasing after your siblings, and there's always activities to do, and done gymnastics. So that was really a hard moment for me, where you just kind of sat there and, I mean, I hate to say, almost had like a pity party. But you're just like, why? Like, why me? Like, I'm somebody that wants to be healthy, and I feel like I don't take like my health for granted. Like, gosh darn it. Like, wait a second, what's happening here? And so if you ask anybody that knows me, I also tend to be a bit on the stubborn side. Don't ask my husband. We won't go there. But I had kind of decided, you know what? Like, I feel like I need to push my limits just a little bit. Like, if anything happens, I'll pull the reins back and okay. But I almost needed just that sense of, I tried. At least I tried. Like, okay, fine, I'll move on and I'll accept this sentence per se that's being put on me. All of my doctors really loved that. That was great. Got a couple threats that I was going to get fired as a patient. And that was really great, considering that at this point now I'm working in the hospital, as a nurse aide during nursing school. All the docs know my mom and my stepdad, and they're like, come on, this is not right. Like, you need to talk some sense into her. And so I can say that that's where this story of being unstoppable, take the O out, add the A, came in. Just, again, like, I wanted to try to see what I could do. You're handed this. And I wasn't okay with that. And I just wanted to see if I could experience a little bit more in life than what I was being told I'd be able to do. So then throughout all of that stuff, like I said, worked in the ICU, and I loved that. Yes, there were moments where I was like, okay, maybe we're going to step back a second. Let me just go take a quick, like 5-minute breather or whatever, like maybe after like a code situation, just needing to get that adrenaline down and how it affected me. But otherwise, I felt like I handled things really good. Like my heart was going, okay, all right, we're with you. We can do this. Then throw in when my husband and I got married, we had to go through infertility stuff. And when we finally were blessed enough to get pregnant with our son, it was one of those moments where like everybody was like, I don't know. Like, you weren't supposed to do that. You weren't supposed to do this. Like, we don't know if your heart's going to tolerate this. And went through a whole crazy birth experience with him, going into preterm labor at 29 weeks and ending up in the hospital on bed rest for the remainder of that pregnancy. But throughout all that, the one thing that didn't go wrong was my heart. And everybody was like, how is this happening? Like, cardiologists coming into the hospital room, and they're like, how are we having like no issues with your heart right now? Like, this has been red flag since the minute like we found out you're pregnant. And then fast forward to like me trying to be again that runner, I'm trying to run all these races. And for the most part, no issues. Like, I always promised all of my family, look, if anything comes up, if anything happens, I will stop, I will walk, and I'll be done with the race, because I had to keep that promise to them. And knowing too, at this point, like, I'm a mom. I can't push my limits as much as maybe I used to think that I could, And then fast forward to having my daughter Aubrey, and ended up having to have a total hysterectomy with her, and then had my second pacemaker 2 weeks after I had her. So I think all the moms out there will appreciate this. There is nothing like going in for the surgery and realizing you forgot your pump at home, and it's too late to turn back. And yeah, I'm very grateful for the staff during that surgery, which happened to be like an all-female team, helping the situation that was happening with engorged chest that could not be alleviated. I was like, okay, like God's got such a great sense of humor. And then let's see. So then it would have been this last November, so November 13th of last year. I guess I should back up. October, my daughter and I were watching a movie, and all of a sudden I started having really, really bad chest pain. I knew something was wrong. And obviously the first thing I think of is like, okay, Sarah, what's your signs? Like heart attack, okay, numbness, like what's going on? And it wasn't matching that, but it was to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to let somebody know. A really cool thing about my pacemaker is that it's technically like Wi-Fi. So I have a little box that sits next to my bed, and every night it transmits the last 24-hour reading to my cardiologist. But there's also like an emergency button on there that I'm able to hit, and that it automatically gives them this alert that says like, hey, you need to check this out. Somebody needs to look at this. So I sent that in, and I got a call the next morning, was like, yeah, we're going to need you to come into the hospital. Like, we need to check some things out. And it turns out that one of my leads, I have a lead that goes to the top part of my heart and a lead that goes to the bottom part of my heart. One of them had fractured and broke. And that just gives a whole different world of issues, besides the fact that now you don't have both leads to help both chambers beat. And that is a risk for a hole in your heart, or damaging your heart when you have a lead that's just kind of flopping around in there. So then right away being told that, I knew what that meant. And they were like, yeah, we're going to have to go in for surgery. The thing with this surgery though, is it's very complicated and runs a high risk of having to open up your chest to do the surgery. And so now, being this mom with 2 kids and going, okay, number one, I know too much because I was a nurse and I've seen these surgeries. Number 2, my mom's pacemaker rep, and you just, again, like being in this field, too much, and just thinking, okay, all right, Well, we've made it this far. You've been able to accomplish like everything that they told you wouldn't be able to accomplish. I just have to continue to trust that God's got a plan, and one way or another we'll get through this. I'm very, very grateful for my team and for everybody involved in the surgery and just everything. Thankfully, again, by the grace of God, they did not have to open up my chest. They were able, after several hours, to get out that lead and put in my third pacemaker. And so here we're just like knocking on wood that I can make it at least 5 more years before we have to go in and do anything else in there. But I didn't know I actually have, this isn't my exact pacemaker, but that's an example.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So this just sits like right in here, my chest. This one's about that big, but I mean, every day I walk into the gym is one more day that I shouldn't have been able to walk into the gym. Every morning I get to wake my kids up is one more morning that I shouldn't have been able to wake up kids because I wasn't supposed to have kids. You know, I mean, I've gotten to run races, I've gotten to go skydiving, I've gotten to do everything that I've wanted to do despite what people told me, you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do this. And I have to completely attribute it obviously to God, but to also just having an amazing family that has such a positive outlook that you can't help but be like, yeah, why are we taking for granted all of these little moments? Like, God's given me today. Let's go. Let's try. I mean, the worst that's going to happen is, hey, I can't finish that race, or I can't finish that workout. Like, or I can't keep up with my kids today. That's all right. You guys go play, go have fun. Like, mom will be over here. But at least I tried. And I know how much those little moments mean to me and to my family to be able to witness all of this stuff.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I mean, that's a powerful, powerful story on so many different levels. When you originally were diagnosed, what exactly were you diagnosed with? Like, I mean, obviously this was a few years ago. I'm not saying you're old by any means, but it was a few years ago.
I am. I turned 41.
You know, technology has progressed, research progresses, right? Like all of those things. So I'm curious, like when you were diagnosed, what was it that you were diagnosed with? And, you know, obviously recommendations, I'm sure, are starting to change, maybe hopefully within this realm, but just curious, like what that looked like then versus maybe what that looks like now, in regards to like how you've been navigating.
Absolutely. So my first diagnosis was SVT. I won't go into like the big long words, but that was the first arrhythmia. The second one was AVNRT. Then I had pacemaker syndrome, which is where the top chamber beats the same time that the bottom chamber does. So then there's no blood flow circulating, and that causes syncope and all that. Then with that one, they also found that I had the heart block that was worsening. Then I ended up with inappropriate sinus tachycardia, and actually went up to Mayo Clinic and was supposed to have a bit of an experimental surgery done, but was given a 90% chance of paralyzing one side of my diaphragm. And once we realized that the percent went from 50 to 90, I was like, okay, no, like that's ventilator status. Like I'm not willing to do that. So right now I sit with what they call inappropriate sinus tachycardia. My medications, thankfully we found one that works and a dosage that works, and it doesn't make me feel groggy and just run down, because a lot of the cardiac medications have a pretty bad side effect of just making people feel tired all the time. Just, it's awful. And then my pacemaker obviously works when it needs to, when my heart's like, yeah, I don't feel like doing this today. But I will say it's very interesting. One thing that I've noticed from then versus now is there was a bit of, well, it's probably just your hormones. Like, have you been drinking enough water? Are you on your period? Or like, oh, well, you're in nursing school, so that's stressful. Versus like, no, I want you to hear me. Like, hear what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. Forget this. Like, would you say these things to a guy if they came in with these same symptoms? Or would you say, oh, okay, wait, we need to look into that? Now, again, like the cardiologist that I'm with right now is absolutely fantastic. And he knows, like, if I call the hospital or message his nurse, it's an automatic get Sarah in. Like, if she's calling, something's wrong. She knows what's going on. So there's definitely that change of, okay, we really do need to listen to everybody, no matter what they're saying their symptoms are, at least listen, and then let's go from there and figure out what the next step is. I definitely encourage anybody that feels like their chest is just pounding all the time, and yes, you're hydrated, no, you haven't like eaten for 3 hours, as long as everything is normal in those aspects, definitely reach out to your doctor. I mean, the feeling like you're going to pass out all the time, none of that is normal. None of that is normal.
Yeah.
If your hands start swelling up, your feet start swelling up, on top of all these things, definitely reach out to your physician and let them know, like, hey, this is kind of what I'm feeling lately. I just want to get that checked out, because those are definitely symptoms not to ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. Are they still, so for people being diagnosed nowadays, are they still recommending like no babies, no exercise, no any of those things? Or has that started to evolve and change too?
I feel like now a lot of that has kind of, I don't want to say gone to the wayside, but taken into effect, like, okay, let's try this. Your surgery was successful. Great. Maybe ease back into your normal routines and that kind of stuff, versus somebody like me that they joke like, oh yeah, we tell med students about you because like you're not in our textbooks, where it's like one thing after another and still having all these issues. I mean, I still, what was it? March, I think, was my last visit. And I was still being threatened that they were going to fire me, because I was like, well, what do you think about like a half Ironman? And my doctor was like, oh my gosh, we had a really good heart to heart. And I was like, all right, I heard you. We're not going to do that. Okay. All right. But yeah, he knows. He actually said, he goes, why do you always have to do this? Like unstoppableness. And I was like, I just have to, that's how I am. I've come too far. I'm not going to stop now, but that's fine. We'll just push the PR at the gym maybe instead.
I like that plan anyway. With the desire to do things differently, like obviously, like, you're 17 to 20, probably 3, 4, as all of this is going on. Being told that you can't have kids is like, I'm sure for a lot of us, like, yeah, no, like,
right.
Let's rethink that. Right. But movement, all of those things, like you were an athlete, you were doing all these things and having that emotional attachment to those experiences and like feeling like that's an outlet and like all of those things, like all of that is, things that so many people take for granted, right? Like we take for granted the ability to walk around our block. We take for granted the ability to run if we so choose. We take for granted the ability to do a lot of different things in our lives, but movement being one of those that, like, when I sit down with a patient and I'm talking about like the benefits of exercise or whatever it may be, like I always say, like, exercise is the ability to move our body intentionally. You move your body every day. You move your body while you're at rest, right? Like while you're sitting here, your body is energetically doing something.
Yeah.
But when we bring intention to it, that's what we would call exercise. And to have that ability taken away or being told that you can't would feel absolutely defeating. I always say, like, I'm so grateful for my ability to like do what I do. And when I can't, it is not my favorite. If I'm having pain or if I have an injury or like something like that, it is not something that I'm going to navigate well. And I would figure out a way that I could safely like start to navigate those waters too. But I'm sure like pushback from doctors, friends, family, how much of that do you feel, I'm just going to be super straightforward. How much of that do you feel was that inner knowing versus an ego, maybe, right? Like, don't tell me I can't type of thing versus like inner knowing of, I know my body and I'm going to lean in, right? Like, I'm just going to take that choice to continue to lean in.
Absolutely. I definitely would say there was a good percent that was ego. Again, just because I'm so stubborn and I'm like, oh, hold on. Like, no. I already don't get to run all this stuff. Like, let me do this.
Yeah.
But yeah. The rest of it was just almost having like that, like I said earlier, where you kind of had that pity party for a minute, where you're just angry and crying and frustrated with like, why is all this stuff happening? But at that same time, having those emotions shift and say, okay, we're done. Sarah, you have one life. Doesn't mean that you get to choose how this life is going to go, clearly, because this was not on my bucket list by any means. But you're going to run it. Like, go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you know that you can at least try. Like, you have air in your lungs. You have the ability to move your legs. You have vision in your eyes. Like, go. Let's see what you can do. And that was really that moment of where I'm like, I will not sit back and let life pass me by. It's not going to be an easy road by any means, but that's okay. I'm up for that challenge because I know that I'm mentally strong enough to try this. And I know that I have an incredible support system to say, okay, we'll walk beside you on this journey and we're here to catch you if you start to feel weak or if you start to feel like I can't do this anymore. And then now having kids that are, 12 and 10 that have seen me go through one of these surgeries, and to hear them tell their friends like, oh yeah, my mom's unstoppable, just so you know, like she has heart stuff, but she's unstoppable. And it's like one of those where you're like, okay, I always hoped to inspire at least one person with what I've overcome and what I have tried to push past. But when you hear your kids tell other people that, you're like, there. Like, that's why I keep pushing. That's why I keep showing up. Even when I'm just like, gosh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it is time to like pump the brakes a little bit. And you're like, nope, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going.
Yeah. How many times have you had to put yourself back in the box or had to check the ego and, really get real with yourself? Because as much, we could equate this to just as much as like, fitness motivation or, feeling like I need to go to the gym versus like, I probably shouldn't go to the gym, in regards to relatability of people. Like nobody has gone through what you're going through, but in regards to relatability there, that inner knowing of like, what I should do is actually sit my butt on the couch and rest today. Like, how often have you had to navigate that? And like, how do you navigate those moments and give yourself permission? Because I'm sure they show up. They show up for everybody.
Absolutely. I would say that happens a lot. It happens a lot, especially when you get into that mentality of like, okay, I got to get to the gym. I got to get to the gym. I can't take a rest day. And then your body's like, no, like you just stop. You cannot do this. And it's almost like I have an incredible best friend, Lisa, who will literally call me out. And she's like, you're not doing this. Like, no, you're going to take a rest day. You were just talking about how your heart's been doing all sorts of weird things. Like, sit your butt down. Don't make me contact your husband. Like, no. But a big one, honestly, was after surgery last year. I think I was just so mad how everything had happened and just, a way that the fear had turned to anger because I wasn't expecting my lead to break. But it was probably like the middle of December. And I was like, that's it. I'm going back to the gym. Knowing I can't move this arm. I can't do anything with this side for several more weeks. And I kept telling everybody, I'm just going to go walk on the treadmill. I'm going to go walk on the treadmill. It's fine. It's fine. And the look on my husband's face, like, the heck if you are, like, no, you're not leaving this house. And so there are those times where I need that reinforcement of, Sarah, check your ego. Like, it's not going to hurt you. It's actually better for you that you're taking these rest days, that you're listening to your body. And again, it's that reminder of like, okay, I do need to respect my body. Like, I am so grateful for what it's allowed me to do and how far it's allowed me to push. But there also comes that line where, like you said, like, you just have to stop and look yourself, in the mirror and say, okay, Sarah, throw the ego to the side. Like, your health is number one. And are you willing to risk going to the gym just because I'm on the streak? Like, I got to make sure I keep going versus your kids need you. And so that's like that internal voice where I have to be like, okay. And then, like I said, then, have reinforcements, on my shoulders. No, you're not doing that. So
yeah. I mean, and sometimes that's the biggest sign of strength, when we're able to lean in and lean out, like being able to find that spectrum of what we innately know. I think as women, we're at an advantage there a little bit, just that inner knowing and that intuition and like really being able to gauge, like, is this what's really going on inside here? Like, is this a lean in moment or is this a lean out moment? Like, how do I hold myself accountable to show up in the best way I possibly can, not only today, but also like in the future. Like, I mean, you could relate to the gym of like, okay, I could go to the gym and give a subpar performance and feel completely depleted at the end. And I'm not really sure why I did that. Or I could rest and tomorrow I could kick ass. Excuse me. I just cursed on here. I don't even know if I'm allowed to do that, but I did.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm able to show up better, right? Like I can perform better because I took that space and I took that time, 12 hours. Like I'm going to be okay in that 12-hour window, right? And so many women struggle with both aspects of that, just in fitness and in life in general. Like hustle culture is amazing, and we have awesome benefits from it, but also like we are creatures that need to rest and digest and be able to adapt to the hustle culture that we're creating. So I commend you for being one that has to navigate that spectrum just in a different way and a completely different level of intentionality there. That's not easy to do.
Yeah. No, I'm so grateful again, just to have the people around me that help me navigate that, because it is so hard. I mean, even for instance, when I'm taking Pilates, I have Aaron and Wendy are two instructors over at Fly that are my favorite. And
I know Wendy.
Right. Yes. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, she's amazing.
But they are so amazing because they know my story. They know what to watch for. And there's been times where they're like, hey, just stop, just have a seat. And it's nice because, again, you need that reminder sometime, because I feel like society pushes us, go, 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 go. And if you're not going, oh, that's too bad. You just lost out on all these things you could have accomplished, or you could have achieved, or you could have done. Like, no, don't sit around. Nope. Why are you taking a rest day? Let's go. And I think that that's something, like you said, we as women, we struggle with, because we feel like, no, we've got all this. We've got to get going. We can't rest. We can't give our body a break. And it's like, no, we need to do those things.
Would you feel like your body responds differently and better when you are more intentional about like setting that expectation of like, this is my rest, and listening to your body? I know for me personally, like when I have been in periods of like extremely high cortisol, or not that I even know that on like my lab level, but just feeling it in my body, like I know I'm navigating a lot and I'm doing high intensity exercise on top of it. I might feel better in the moment. Like I might get that endorphin rush and like really feel better in the moment. But if I stay on that stepping stool, like my body feels inflamed. It responds differently. Like I can feel inflammation in my face and in my joints and my belly, like all of these different things. And then when I am intentional about kind of like leaning out a little bit and like finding that balance of like intensity with intention, like being balanced in that way, I feel like my body really does respond back to me like, okay, like we're good. Like we're going to go ahead and like let this inflammation go, let go of some water weight, and really just like show up better so that I can perform better again. And I'm curious on your level, like from a heart perspective or from a hormone balances and like all of those different things, do you experience that within that spectrum?
Absolutely. I definitely can tell on those stretches of where I'm just really trying to push myself when I should be taking those rests and just like, okay, Sarah, it's okay. You can do this. But when I ignore those signs, my heart starts acting up. I can feel myself go in and out of these arrhythmias. A couple years ago, I got diagnosed with some GI issues, and one of those being like gluten issues. And you would talk about like the inflammation you were saying. The whole thing flares up. So I'm like, great. So now I'm swollen, like I can't eat anything. My heart's like on the brink. I'm like, okay, just stop. Versus when I actually am, okay, I'm going to take rest day on this day every week, and then I'm only going to do this on this day every week. All of a sudden it's like, wow, it's amazing. Your body's like, perfect. We love this. Here's your reward for letting us rest. I mean, that's how I look at it. It's like your body's like, you finally learned. Here you go, until like the next week. And then I'm like, oh, forget this. And we're back at square one. So it's a constant evolving.
Yeah. I mean, it's normal, right? Like, right? I mean, we don't, like you said earlier, we don't live in a world where there is no stress. I mean, I've had some hormonal issues recently that I've had to navigate and get diagnosed. And I see Mary Jane Glade as my provider. And she was like, okay, like, I was like, could we heal this like on our own? Like, could I heal like these hormone imbalances like on my own? intentionally. And she was like, can you give me 2 years of no stress? And I was like, no. She's like, then no, like, we're going to need some support. And I'm like, fair enough. All right. Call in some backup. And thank God for modern medicine in that way, right? Same with you. Like, thank God for modern medicine. Like, we'll take our tools as we need them.
That's right.
But it can feel a little bit, it can feel defeating, right? Like, to feel like, oh, like, I'm not functioning the way I should. I think women already have a really complicated relationship with their body, not only externally, but also like internally. If you've struggled with infertility or you've struggled with, heart conditions or, anything on the spectrum of like outside of the norm, if you will, feeling like, what's wrong with me? I think that feeling comes up a lot. And how would you speak to that in regards to like how you're navigating that thing, everything, right? Because you had both, you had infertility and you had the heart stuff. So how do you, love on yourself physically in that way?
I honestly have to say, I think going through all of my infertility issues was harder on me than dealing with having all of my heart issues. Because as a woman, part of my thing was like, I can't wait to be a mom. I can't wait to be a mom. And then already having no, you can't do that because your heart stuff. But then also having all of my endometriosis, and your body's like, good luck to you. Like, we're not going to make this easy on you. So that honestly was one of the biggest struggles of like, why can't I be normal? And I remember having those conversations with my husband, like, like, why can't I just at least have this normal? Like, I already have my heart stuff. Like, why can't I at least get a pass on this? And him saying, like, this is just part of your journey and this is part of your story. And you eventually getting pregnant, because we would always speak positive affirmations, like, we are going to get pregnant, we are going to get pregnant. And he's like, and one day you're going to be able to share this to hopefully help somebody else that's going through this. And so I feel like it goes back to trying to always focus on having that positive mindset, because at least that's something we can control, right? Like, we can't control everything else going on with us, in us, around us, but we can at least try to find the positive in every situation. So again, just trying to like, okay, at least I'm able to try these infertility treatments. At least I was able to get in with a good fertility doctor, and so forth like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very growth mindset, positive mindset, whether you believe in the power of prayer, manifestation, or, energy, or all of those things. Like, they're all, in my mind, all one and the same, right? Like, it's all a matter of like elevating ourselves and being energetic beings. And doesn't mean we're always going to get the results that we're always wanting, but it doesn't mean that we can't experience the process maybe a little bit different, and a little bit better. On respect for your time, but I want to chat real quick on advocacy. We've done a few episodes on here in the past talking about, medical gaslighting, medical dismissiveness as a woman. We know that, heart attack symptoms in women are very different than necessarily in men. And yet sometimes we're categorized still in that. But just like overall women's health, we know that we wait in waiting rooms longer in ERs. We know that usually it's straight to hormones, or mental health are usually the two that they're going to go to first in regards to like any symptoms that we're presenting with. Not all, but a lot of the time. So advocating for yourself and finding practitioners that are going to listen to you and support you and empower you, because I say all the time, like, especially in the birth world, but really any world, like you mentioned, like potentially getting fired as a patient, like, you're hiring these people, right? Like, they work for you. Like, if you're going to XYZ doctor, they are hired to do their work for you. They are hired to give you their professional opinion, just like an attorney or anything else would. But they are on your team. You are choosing to put them on your team. So how have you navigated, continuing to advocate for yourself throughout this whole process, from diagnosis to, last year's surgical experience?
Absolutely. I actually have the perfect story for this, because like I was saying earlier, several years ago when I ended up having all of these GI issues, I actually had to really this would probably, I would say, advocate for myself more than I ever have with the fertility stuff, with my heart stuff, all of that. And it boiled down to like being a female. Like, are you having a period?
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at him, I said, well, clearly you haven't looked at my health history because I had a complete hysterectomy. And the look on their face. And I'm like, but like you said, like I am hiring them. Like each of these visits, it's almost like an interview of, are you going to stay on this team or am I going to let you go and move to the next one? Because if I'm going to spend my time and my money for you, I need to make sure that we're on the same team. And this became a situation where they weren't wanting to do the tests that need to be done. And maybe in a way, I have a little bit more of that, I mean, stubbornness, but also a little bit more of that edge of having been a nurse, of saying like, I will not accept this behavior. This is what the test showed. I know that this is probably what we need to do, correct? Because if this is correct, if this diagnosis is correct, we have two paths that we need to go down and we need to figure out which one. And I'm not about to do that blindly. And there was a lot of pushback on that. And I eventually fired him. We did the final test and I was like, and I'm done with you. I'll find another group to go to because I am not okay with somebody gaslighting me. It's one thing if I gaslight myself like I did with all my hard stuff, but I'm not going to pay someone to gaslight me. And so I feel like it needs to have that full, like, are they sitting there listening to me? Not just listening, but are they hearing me? Are they really comprehending the words coming out of my mouth? Are they looking at me as a patient versus what my vital signs show, what my labs show? That's great. That's great that the labs look normal, but I'm telling you, I have every symptom over here and you're looking at me and you can see all these symptoms. So clearly something's not matching up. And so I feel like you almost have to give yourself that like green light to just be a little more like assertive, I mean, like you were saying, the chances of a man walking into an office, they're going to have a totally different experience versus we come in and we're supposed to be a little bit more meek and, oh, I'm sorry to bother you. No, I'm not sorry to bother you. I've got issues going on. Like, I need your help. I need your help. And if you're not willing to help me and you're not willing to listen to what I'm saying, or if you're interrupting me and cutting me off and already shutting down that conversation, then that's fine. We can part ways and I'll find somebody else. And so I always tell people, just don't be afraid to walk in like you own that room, because technically you do. Like, you're coming to them, you're hiring them to take care of you or to help solve this problem. It's okay for you to stand up for yourself. There is nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you the B word. It doesn't make you a crazy person. Like, you feel what you're feeling and your symptoms and issues are yours. And that means that you deserve to be treated and to be heard and taken serious. So I always tell people that, like, even my mother-in-law tends to have that struggle of, oh no, they just said I was fine. That was it. And I'm over here going, well, what was blah, 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 blah. Oh, I didn't ask. I'm like, no, okay, give me the number. I'll call him. Like, tell him I'm allowed to get information. Because I'm like, no, we are allowed to stand up for ourselves and have that treatment. So yeah,
I mean, if you don't know what you know, right? Like, if I'm not a nurse, I'm not a trained medical professional in that way, but like, I think a lot of women know what they know, right? Like, you know what you're feeling, you know what you're experiencing, like that inner voice is telling you something's off, even if you're gaslighting yourself out of it, like, in your situation and many other people over the years, myself included, like, you know what you know. And like, if you're not getting somebody that's even willing to acknowledge that or listen to that or ask, like, tell me more, like a simple, like, tell me more about that, like getting the conversation going a little bit more. Let me help you navigate what you know. Like, let me help you, like, walk through and talk through these symptoms and tell me more about that. Like, being able to guide you, because they are the professionals in the room. They should know these types of things, at least to a certain extent. I think what's kind of sad is some of them don't, right? Like, some of them don't necessarily know what they're dealing with or feel like they have experience in that realm. But being able to, Bethany and I had this conversation, Bethany and Vico and I had this conversation. It was just like, if somebody is like, you're asking for something and you've done the research, at least to a certain extent, where you feel like somewhat empowered when you walk in the room, because you should. I wish it wasn't like that, but you should do your own research, and you should do at least a little bit of knowledge-based stuff before you walk in a room, not just on your practitioner, but on your potential Dr. Google. I get it. It's annoying, but like, it's important to educate yourself a little bit. But, you know, and if that practitioner is declining whatever you're asking for, like, you can ask them to chart that. Like, you can ask them to like put that in your chart, that you are declining, that I'm like, you're saying that I don't need this.
Absolutely.
It's an important, empowering, it's terrifying, I'm sure, but it's important to know, like, you can do those types of things. These people work for you. And like, if you hadn't have advocated for yourself, you wouldn't be living the life that you're living right now. Right? Like, yeah, is there some risk involved? Sure. Should everybody do the life that you have continued to live? Maybe not. But there is, like, it's not like we're like promoting, like, do what she does with these conditions, right? Like, that's not what we're saying. But at a certain extent, like, you know your body more than anybody else, and you wouldn't, you know, be able to navigate the life and then feel empowered in the experience that you're having without advocating for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, again, even going back to the first time I started having the heart issues of, are you having your period? Like, it's just hormones, you're stressed with school. And I'm like, stop. No. I know my body. This is not right. Just like everybody else. Like, you know when something's off. You may not be able to pinpoint it, but you know when something's off.
Yeah. It's important. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I could talk for hours and hours and hours on these types of things, to be honest with you. How can people find you, reach out to you? I know you've done fitness coaching in the past, you've done jewelry, you've done social media, like all of the different things. Where can people find you and help support you and your journey and your mission for better wellness and health for everybody?
Absolutely. Instagram, honestly, is just kind of my go-to. Sarah C_smiles, because I try to be positive. Anybody is more than welcome to reach out and message me. I tell everybody there's no such thing as a stupid question except the question you didn't ask. And I'm an open book. Like, if I can share or answer a question of something I've gone through, and if that's going to help you, I am more than willing to talk and just hopefully help somebody else go through something that they're struggling with or trying to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to ask before we close too, what's your favorite movement modalities that you now participate in your life?
Let's see. Honestly, probably anything core for the reformer Pilates. That's why I do that. I love that. But I'm a sucker for back squats and reverse hack squats. I can't do like the front squats because I can't have anything over my pacer. And unfortunately, with my pacer, I also can't do a lot of upper body moves. So we're trying to grow the glutes a little bit more. Like, so anything like that, I'm all about that.
I love it. So strength training, Pilates. Yep. I would imagine you probably walk a decent amount too, I would guess.
Yeah, try to get some steps in. Yeah, that's the extent of my cardio there. I have to call in on that one.
Turning in the running shoes a little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah, I definitely had to do that a couple years ago. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Sarah. This has been thoroughly enjoyable. I see why what you were highly requested, very inspiring, and so many tangible things and applicable things for anybody and everybody. Obviously, there's nobody walking in your shoes, but you can always learn something from someone else. So I appreciate the time that you took to speak with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this. Thank you very much. I feel very honored to be on here.
Oh, we'll have you on again. We'll just figure out a time.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.